Sometimes I sit around and I think about the career of Mickey Keating, and my mind is just turns into a piece of shit. Like, I just don't understand how one man can put out so many movies and they're not horrible. Like, they're actually quite good. Darling is a little bit different than any of his subsequent movies or prior movies because it's sort of an homage to the horror of the 1960s.
It really strikes me as something that has like a Polanski style writing with like Hitchcock style visuals. If you're not a fan of like old like you said, like the 60s movies, if like The Birds, Vertigo, any of that kind of stuff doesn't, Rosemary's Baby, if that doesn't really strike you, then you're probably not going to enjoy this film. But it did all those things that those things did well, but it felt relevant in a modern day, if that makes sense. You know what I mean?
I am not the biggest fan of like the old school, horror stuff. I appreciate it. It has its place, but it's not my favorite thing in the world. And Darling is able to sort of put me in that world and still give me enough of modern type storytelling, modern mystique and intrigue with some pretty gruesome violence every once in a while. It's able to have this feeling about it without really having to make the concessions that you would have had to have made if you were going to make a horror movie back in the 1960s. So in that regard, I thought it was a tremendous success. The movie itself follows a young girl who takes like a caretaking gig, basically, of this big mansion. I don't know if it actually says that it's in New York or...
it's heavily implied that it is in New York.
The homeowners leave. They call in every once in a while to check in. But basically, it's just the main character wandering around this home. She eventually finds this room that she can't get into a little bit early on, and she calls the homeowner and saying, hey, like, I'm trying to take care of your shit, but there's one room I can't get to. And they're like, don't worry about that room. There's a lot about Darling that I don't really know how to put into words or how to explain. It's like she's having these visions, and there's this backstory that exists with this character and these other people. It never really shines light on those moments.
There's a lot of puzzle pieces to this film, and I'm pretty positive that they're all there laid out, sprinkled throughout the movie. But I don't think it's one of those where you can watch it just one time and then, unless you're super observant, and then be able to pick them all up. So I think I would have to watch this movie at least probably 3 times total, I think, to really gather up all the plot point that's there, to really understand it.
We are big Keating fans, and this is the first one of his that I can honestly see people just shitting all over on reviews, not liking it, calling it, pretentious or artsy-fartsy and all this other stuff. I don't necessarily agree with that, but yeah, there is a lot here that you probably need to comb through in multiple viewings to really get a handle on, and it may be in the truest sense of horror for the horror purists out there. Like, this is the way movies used to be made, just with a little extra oomph on it.
For me, this probably is my favorite Keating movie to date, mostly because I think it really does flex his movie knowledge and the way that movies used to be made. I mean, like you said at the beginning, he's a young guy. Like, shows he appreciates where cinema's come from, and he's able to take it, reproduce that, make it feel new, and actually scary.
I can see where some people would think that it's slow, and regardless of like my overarching feelings of it, I don't think Darling is a slow movie at all. You're constantly moving, you're constantly questioning and wondering like what's happening. Is this house haunted? Is she crazy? There's so many things, and there's a history of the house, and shit's been going on there for a long time apparently, and you get pieces of that in there. So there's moving pieces all the time. You can call it a lot of things, but I don't think you can call it slow. That being said, there's also plenty of stuff for gorehounds out there as well.
Surprisingly violent. I didn't think it would go that violent just because everything else was done in that very old school kind of vibe. And I mean, they said that about Hitchcock, I guess, with Psycho, but so I guess I kind of got that Psycho audience reaction when it was more violent than I anticipated.
Had you made this movie in the 1960s, you would never be able to show some of the things that are shown in here. It's really graphic stuff. And that's what makes it so unique, because I'm not sure that anyone has ever at least not on such a widely available format as current video on demand is, made something with such two conflicting genres and maybe not genres, but just film styles and elements of horror of the same genre coming together from different times, blending them. Very impressive, very well done. I recommend it as a watch to anyone that considers themselves a horror fan, but especially if you consider yourself like an old school horror fan. And I'm not talking about 80s camp slashers. I'm talking about old school, 50s, 60s horror.
It's going to be easier to watch this and get that same old vibe than it will be to say go back and watch The Birds or something.
It's worth your time. It's definitely worth your time.
Yeah, like I say, I'm going to stick with it. Probably my favorite. Yeah, I'm just going to say it is my favorite Mickey Keating movie. And it's because of, the way it's edited, the way it's shot. I like that he really stuck to the guns on the black and white old school feel. Hell, we even just double checked on the trailer and it's sliced together like a trailer would have been in like 1966. So
big crazy fonts coming out.
Right. Yeah. Wacky fucking music. So 2 thumbs up for me. We don't ever do 2 thumbs up, but I'm going to do it. Fuck it. 2 thumbs up.
2 thumbs up. Thumb and a half.
Thumb and a half. Fair enough.
Sure.
Still riding that Mickey Keating bandwagon.
Dude.
You're leading the wagon, right?
I'm leading. I've been leading the wagon for a long time. So yeah.
I'm jumping up front with you on this one.
Okay.
I'm jumping up front.
You got shotgun. It's fine. I can't wait to see what he does next, and we're probably not going to have to wait too long to see what that is. Carnage Park has distribution. It won't be that much longer until we see it. Until then, April 1st, you can watch Darlene on your VOD platform of choice, and we recommend that you do so.
Definitely do that one. And then we'll be behind on Mickey Keaton movies for the rest of the year, I'm sure.
I'm sure.